Yeah, the lead to do it, but I fear that you will get more violence. Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do. You know, Biden pardoned half his family going out the door. I think most Americans, if this continues, to see this as an abuse of the pardon power, that we'll revisit the pardon power of the president if this continues. But as to pardoning violent people who beat up cops, I think that's a mistake.
That was Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a strong ally of the president, breaking with him on the pardons of violent January 6 rioters. Joining us now, two former federal prosecutors who worked on January 6 cases, Jason Manning and Ashley Akers. Jason Manning, since I messed up your name, I'll start with you. So first of all, you have some thoughts on these pardons. What do you think the message is that they send, and what do you think the impact will be?
I think the message that they send is a terrible one, and I'd call attention to what Sergeant Gonell of the Capitol Police, an Iraq War veteran who served bravely at the Capitol and who was injured in such an atrocious way that he had to have multiple surgeries to repair his injuries following January 6th. And he recently said that the pardons are a mockery and a desecration of the officers who fought to defend our democracy that day, a mockery and a desecration. And I worry about the message that's being sent that if you commit crimes in the president's name, if you commit crimes to further the president's agenda, those crimes are okay. And what message that sends to police officers, and how we'll be able to have a justice system if we don't have police officers who believe that they'll be supported.
Ashley Akers, to you, tell us about the cases that you worked on and your thoughts on the pardons.
I worked on several, numerous dozens of cases involving incredibly violent offenders who made it their purpose and goal when they came to the United States Capitol on January 6th to stop the peaceful transition of power. These people wore military gear. They had bulletproof vests on. They had helmets on, as you see in the video footage here. They brought makeshift weapons. They brought real weapons. And for hours and hours, they made it their goal to get into the United States Capitol and to stop the peaceful transition of power. And like Jason just said, no message could be more clear and could be more dangerous from the President of the United States, condoning this violence, not only against the Capitol building, but also the Capitol Police and also against our democracy.
So, Jason, it's not just, some have said to me, that this is President Trump pardoning actions in the past, but perhaps setting up a permission structure for those involved, including members of the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and the like, to act out violently in the future, knowing that he has their back. How much of a concern is something like that for you and fellow prosecutors?
That's a tremendous concern, and I'm glad you raised the question. I was really moved by the remarks earlier on this program by Richard Haas about International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a day that we remember the victims of Nazi atrocities. And when you think about the lessons of that history, think about Tim Snyder's 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, and he talks about be wary of paramilitaries. And if you observed what happened on January 6th, and you saw organized armed groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, who organized to commit violence, consequential acts of violence on January 6th, or in the case of the Oath Keepers, who brought a tremendous amount of weapons to the D.C. metro area that day, everybody coming out of January 6th would have been wary about the impacts of paramilitary groups in our society. And now with the message that these pardons send to these groups and the way these groups are emboldened by these pardons, we have to be doubly wary about what they say to what they can do to our society.
So, Ashley, to you now, just what are your thoughts about this current Department of Justice? Pam Bondi, the Attorney General nominee. We have Kash Patel, who's Donald Trump's pick to be FBI director. As you see this institution, one, of course, you've held in high regard in the past, do you feel like it will still conduct the people's business in a fair and legal way?
I think that historically the Department of Justice is a very prestigious, well thought of institution in our government, and the people who work there are always held to the highest standards, and that's for a reason. Something that I think is especially troubling that we've seen this week is a Department of Justice that has taken a turn, and in fact, you may have seen recent reporting that one of the judges of the court issued an order that changed the supervised release conditions of some of the seditious conspiracists who were the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. And the judge indicated that those people are not allowed to come to Washington, D.C. or the United States Capitol without his express permission. The response from the Justice Department was appalling. The new U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. Filed a motion advocating on behalf of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, asking the judge to reverse that decision. So this department has taken a literal 180 turn. We used to be in support of law enforcement, in support of democracy, in support of the peaceful transition of power. And what we've seen so far is a Justice Department that is taking the side of these violent rioters whose goal it was to stop the democratic process. And it's scary.
Former federal prosecutors Jason Manning and Ashley Akers, thank you both very much for coming on the show this morning. Thank you.